We continue with our Holy Bible reading to request divine union, Theosis, with our Lord Jesus Christ, God. And we continue with the Old Testament from chapter 39 of Genesis. We're supposed to be reading 2 chapters of the Old, 1 chapter of the New every day, but we're going twice as fast. So instead of finishing in a year, we should be finished in 6 months, because we're reading the Holy Bible, the whole of the Holy Bible, King James Version. It also has the book of the Maccabees. So we go on with Genesis 39. Joseph imprisoned in Egypt. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, Pharaoh's eunuch and captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was living in the house of his lord the Egyptian. So his Lord saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. Thus Joseph found grace in his sight and was pleasing to him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and put everything he had under Joseph's authority. So it was from the time he made him overseer of his house and all he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all he had in Joseph's hand, and did not know what he had except for the bread he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Then it came to pass after these things that the Lord's wife, that is Potiphar's wife, cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his Lord's wife, "Look, my Lord does not know what is with me in the house, and has committed all he has to my hand," meaning he's referring to Potiphar. "There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this wickedness and sin against God?" So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not heed her, to lie with her, or to have relations with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand, and fled and ran outside. So it was when she saw he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called to the men of her house, and spoke to them, saying, "See, he brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. Thus it happened, when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, he left his garment with me, and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment with her until his Lord came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, "The Hebrew servant you brought to us came into me to mock me. So it happened, as I lifted my voice and cried out, he left his garment with me and fled outside." So it was, when this Lord heard the words of his wife, spoke to him, saying, "Your servant did to me after this manner." His anger was aroused. Then Joseph's Lord took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and he gave him grace in the sight of the chief prison keeper. So the chief keeper of the prison put under Joseph's authority both the prison and all the prisoners, and whatever they did there. The chief keeper of the prison did not look into anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Joseph interprets the dreams of the prisoners. Chapter 40. Now it came to pass that after these things, that the king of Egypt's chief cupbearer and the chief baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. So Pharaoh was angry with his 2 eunuchs, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. Thus he put them in custody with the chief bodyguards in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. Then the chief jailer committed them to Joseph, and he attended them, so they were in custody for a while. When the king of Egypt's chief cupbearer and the chief baker, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with his own interpretation. So Joseph came into them in the morning, and looked at them, and saw they were troubled. Thus he asked Pharaoh's eunuchs, who were with him in the custody of his lord, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they said to him, "We each had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Therefore relate them to me." Then the chief cupbearer related his dream to Joseph and said to him, "Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will remember your position and restore your office of chief cupbearer, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you, and have mercy on me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and I also have done nothing for them to put me into the dungeon." When the chief baker saw the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket of my head." So Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all of his servants, and he remembered the positions of his chief cupbearer and chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief cupbearer to his position, but he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph has interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Joseph interprets the dreams of Pharaoh. Chapter 41. Then it came to pass to the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. But the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a 2nd time, and suddenly 7 ears of corn came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears of corn, thin and blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. But the 7 thin ears of corn devoured the 7 plump and full ears. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the interpreters of Egypt and all its wise men. Thus Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I remember my sin this day, when Pharaoh was angry with his servant and put me in custody in the house of the chief bodyguard, both myself and the chief baker. We each had a dream in one night, both he and I. Each had a dream regarding himself. Now there was with us a young Hebrew servant of the chief bodyguard, and we related our dreams to him, and he interpreted them for us. And it came to pass just as he interpreted for us. So it happened. He restored me to my office, but he hanged him." Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon, and he shaved, changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. Thus Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it." So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, in my dream I stood on the banks of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. When they had eaten them, no one would have known they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. So I woke and fell asleep again, and again I saw in my dreams, and suddenly 7 ears of corn came up on one stalk, full and good. Then behold, 7 ears of corn, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprung up after them. But the thin ears of corn devoured the 7 good ears. So I told all this to the interpreters, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of corn are 7 years. The dreams are one. But the 7 thin, ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will rise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because a thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a sensible and intelligent man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint governors over the land, to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land in the 7 plentiful years. So let them gather all the food of the 7 good years that are coming, and store up grain under Pharaoh's authority, and let them keep food in the cities. That food shall then be as reserve in the land for the 7 coming years of famine in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine." Joseph made ruler over Egypt. Now this advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. Thus Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find such a man as this, who has the Spirit of God in him?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as sensible and intelligent as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took the signet ring off his hand, and put it onto Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. Then he had him rule over in the second of his chariots, and they cried out before him, "Bow the knee." So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Then Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years of prosperity in the land of Egypt, and stored the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields that surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. Now 2 sons were born to Jacob before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God had made me forget all my troubles and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my humiliation. Then the 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph said, the famine was in the lands, but in all the land the famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, do." The famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. Then countries also came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the earth. Chapter 42. Joseph's brothers come to Egypt. When Jacob found out there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing idle?" Then he said, "Indeed, I heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brother, for he said, "Lest some calamity befall him." Thus the sons of Israel went to buy grain with those who were going there, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. So Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dream he dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to map out the roads of this country." But they said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are men of peace. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to map out the roads of the land." Then they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and in fact the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I spoke to you, namely, you are spies. In this manner you shall be manifested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you, or else. By the life of Pharaoh surely you are spies." So he put them all together in prison 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the 3rd day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are men of peace, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses. But bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die." So they did so. Then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us." Reuben then answered them, saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, 'Do not sin against the boy'? But you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us." But they did not know Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. Then Joseph turned himself away from them and wept. So he returned to them again, and talked with them, and took Simeon from them, and bound him before their eyes. Joseph then gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey, and thus he did for them. The brothers depart for Canaan. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, "My money has been returned to me, and there it is in my sack." Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is this God has done to us?" Then they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, "This man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, 'We are men of peace, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the lord of the country, said to us, 'By this I will know you are men of peace. Leave one of your brothers here with me, take food for your household, and be gone. Now you bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know you are not spies, but men of peace, and I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." Then it happened as they emptied their sacks that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So Jacob their father said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." And we'll continue with chapter 43 tomorrow. And now we'll go into New Testament, Matthew 19. We continue. Divorce and marriage. Now it came to pass, when Jesus had finished these sayings, that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him and saying to him, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason?" And he answered and said to them, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh'? So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and put her away?" He said to them, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." Of course, this also goes for men, right? If a single woman marries a divorced man, she commits adultery too, of course. Now, his disciples said to him, "If such is a case of the man with his wife, it is better not to marry." But he said to them, "All cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it has been given. For there are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He who is able to accept it, let him accept it." Eunuchs who have made themselves a eunuch, meaning monastics who keep their chastity. Receiving the children. Then little children were brought to him, that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. And Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And he laid his hands on them and departed from there. Riches in the kingdom. Now behold, one came and said to him, "Good teacher, what good things shall I do that I may have eternal life?" So he said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, and that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments." He said to him, "Which ones?" And Jesus said, "You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The young man said to him, "All these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack?" Jesus said to him, "If you want to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come, follow me." But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Assuredly I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God." Then his disciples heard it, and they were greatly astonished, saying, "Who then can be saved?" But Jesus looked at them and said to them, "With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." Then Peter answered and said to him, "See, we have left all and followed you. Therefore, what shall we have?" So Jesus said to them, "Assuredly I say to you, that in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses, or brothers or sisters, or fathers or mothers, or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. Chapter 20, the first and the last. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Now when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the 3rd hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said to them, You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you. So they went. Again he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and said to them, Why have you been standing here idle all day? And they said to him, Because no one hired us. He said to them, You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive. So when the evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, Call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning with the last and the first. And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more, and they likewise received a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them, and said, Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I am good? So the last will be first, and the first last, for many are called, but few are chosen. Jesus' death and resurrection. Now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them, Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed by the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify, and the 3rd day he will be risen again. Leaders as servants. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, What do you want? What do you wish? She said to him, Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left, in your kingdom. But Jesus answered and said, You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and be baptized in the baptism that I am baptized with? They said to him, We are able. So he said to them, You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, but to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant, and whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. 2 blind men confess to Jesus as Lord. 2 blind men confess Jesus as Lord. Now as they went out of Jericho, a great multitude followed him. And behold, 2 blind men sitting by the road, when they heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David. Then the multitude warned them that they should be quiet, but they cried out all the more, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David. So Jesus stood and called them and said, What do you want me to do for you? They said to him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. So Jesus had compassion and touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. And we'll continue with chapter 21, Palm Sunday, the Messianic King, with the next reading. God bless you and thank you. and please be very careful. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.